Hey everyone, welcome. Just quickly, we're going to get going and we're going to start right in the show because we do have a lot to talk about today, for sure. And why don't we just do that actually? Let's just go straight in. I mean, we were going to talk about Bob Saget a little bit. Bob Saget passing away, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, just well, we learned about it from Russ because Russ is our resident Grim Reaper. So
Yeah.
he did the RIP, and I was like, only 65 years old. It's bizarre. I mean, he was associated with Norm Macdonald because he directed Norm Macdonald's movie Dirty Work, and obviously he was on Full House and a few other things. But he was only 65, and it's strange when somebody that young. I mean, 65 is young now.
Yeah, what I found fascinating about him is I don't know if you've heard his comedy act. Like he is obviously, he's Mr. Wholesome on Full House, but his comedy routine is raunchy.
Yes, very much so.
To say the least. Yet he's one of the, according to everybody who spoke about him, one of the kindest people you're ever going to meet. And I really enjoyed reading. CNN did this piece about. I guess he did a comedy tour called "I Don't Do Negative." And one of the things is the minute you like criticize him or get all over him about anything, he just blocks you. He said, I don't have time for that. And he said, for example, someone says, you're not funny. Well, I am funny. So you're blocked, so, so I thought about maybe I would go, I don't do negative, but I have to get rid of you, Mike, and I like you. So I'm going to do a little bit of I'm going to do a little bit of negative. So
wait, but Kev, the thing is, for you to block me, you have to follow me.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't block you, but I'm just saying I don't do negative. I really thought that was just kind of a hilarious thing.
That's
well,
my favorite thing. My favorite thing is to mute people. To be honest, it's like
right, exactly.
Muting people is. I mean, I don't really block people anymore. I really don't mute people too often. I mean, if I'm really kind of the mindset right now that our job is to help people get through this whole pandemic, to give something entertaining for them to do it. If something that helps them get through is to just be a bastard to me online, that's fine. If that helps them, that's cool. I mean, I really don't care. We have a lot of people. I've learned. I mean, my skin's pretty darn thick after all this time, so I don't really.
It's funny. I've been blocked by very few people. There's I won't name the name, but there's a Toronto reporter who I met once. We got along at a game, and I went to follow him on Twitter, and I had found out he'd already blocked me. I'm like, what? So
that happened with me and one player agent, too, which we've mentioned before.
Well, no. I mean, Alan Walsh has blocked me on Twitter, and the only thing I've ever said negative about Alan Walsh was when I had sent in an email or text message to the Jeff Merrick Wyshynski podcast back in the day. This is 2012, and they were asking for who was at fault for the lockout, and it was jokingly, obviously.
Right.
And we know Alan Walsh, he texts or tweets, multiple times during the day. And I said, well, Alan Walsh is to blame because anybody with guilt in their heart texts every minute of the day. And he must have not found that funny because I was meant it as a sarcastic comment because immediately he had blocked me on Twitter.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I've always gotten along with him. I actually
like him.
Yeah, I do too. I find that I agree with a lot of his positions. He's over the top, but he's a former prosecutor, which is really hard to believe when you into his politics that he was a prosecutor. But I've been told by people who knew him as a prosecutor that he was just as zealous, as a prosecutor too. So. But he's had some great causes. I think everyone got weary of the concussions, but he keeps it in the news. He pushes it hard, and he sometimes I think maybe some of his clients don't even agree with how aggressive he is, but he does it anyway. So
definitely, and the first story I want to talk about actually has is very nice transitions to that. So let's get going here.
Okay.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, January 10th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and the Buffalo Bills are in the playoffs, but I don't know how long that will last.
I'm Kevin Allen, and of course the Lions aren't in the playoffs.
I'm Eklund, and I'm stunned that the Eagles are in the playoffs. It doesn't make any sense at all. So, because when I don't follow them very closely, but suddenly they're in the playoffs, and I followed them beginning of the year, and they were terrible. So now they're in the playoffs. Anyway, you're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I wanted to start off with the game on Saturday night between Vegas and Chicago for a second. Now this was like this is the big return of Marc-Andre Fleury to Vegas. Beloved. They do a really good job. They cheer him. They fans go nuts. He's their franchise. He is their thing. He is if there's one person that you associate with Vegas, still it's Marc-Andre Fleury, and he's not even there anymore, right? And this is a team that's only been around for a very short period of time.
Most popular player in team history.
Yeah, he is, and one of the most popular players in the NHL over the last several years, and one of the most bought shirts. I know the Vegas Golden Knights Marc-Andre Fleury shirt was one of the most bought shirts all around the league, and just a great guy in general. We've talked about it a lot, and their move to move him obviously to go and make space for Eichel was it'll be debatable for a while, but at the end of the day, he comes in and he just has like the thing that makes Marc-Andre Fleury. He just plays unbelievable in Vegas with a bad team with Chicago and wins the game 2-1, making 32 saves. And he just stands on his head, literally, right? And is awarded the second star of the game for this in the building. This now I don't usually complain about stars. I mean, I've been lucky enough to hand out the stars a couple times in Philly in the press box. Russ has too. It's like we've all been had a chance. Like in Philly, they go around pretty nicely and who knows? And this is anybody. But the reality is that Ben Hutton was given the first star of the game, who scored the only goal for Vegas in a loss. Right, Ben Hutton. So
former Leaf Ben Hutton. Yeah.
How the hell is Marc-Andre Fleury not the first star in a game like this, Kevin? This is like the most astonishing.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, but I just can't get worked up over 3 stars. But you're right. I mean, he should have been the first star, and most, there's a lot. Usually, there's journalists doing that, and they pay attention to things like that. Like I know I do. If there's some sentimentality that goes with it, I mean, these are 3 stars. Like it's not that big a deal.
Even if there is no sentimentality, even if you were just flown in, he made 32 saves in a 2-1 victory. In a road game. I mean, although I tend to think that journalists do sort of try to get the home team involved, but I mean, you're right. The general rule is you're going to give the home, if it's a close game, you give the home team the second star.
Yeah,
if they lose, the home team no one ever. Because this is the big thing about the stars, right? There's the guys who are given the stars. If they lose at home, they're not going to skate out. Right. So when you give, so like Ben Hutton, it's like Marc-Andre Fleury, second star. Marc-Andre Fleury skates out because he feels like the fans, we appreciate it. He skates out. And then Ben Hutton, the first star, doesn't skate out because he lost.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if have you ever given all 3 stars to the opposing team? Yeah. I have.
No, me personally, no. I don't think I've ever, it's never been a blowout type of game. I've always.
I've done that. Yeah. But you just if your team loses 6-0, in the home arena, the other team probably
definitely the other team gets the start, and that's fine. But this was like if it was anybody, if it was any backup goalie or whoever playing, I mean, he's the reason they won. And on top of that is, of course, it's such a huge story in the city, and it almost felt to me like you could say it's just one journalist just blowing it or whatever. But you'd also sit there and say that. Journalists are afraid of people. They're afraid of general managers. They're afraid of things. And I wonder, if this was a fear-like thing, a GM.
Yeah, I doubt it because generally you overcompensate, because you're always trying to prove your impartiality. So it's kind of like I always equate it like when you're the dad. Like people think that the offspring of coaches get favoritism, but more often than not, I've noticed. It's the other way around. Like they go out of their way.
For years. Yeah, I coached my daughter for years, and she was a starting goalie, and they another goalie came in and tried out. He was really good, and I ended up splitting the time with her, and she was pissed at me all the time, like all the time. Like I can't believe. I mean, she would have been pissed at her coach, whoever it was.
I mean,
But,
how long do you think Steve Belichick is going to have to go in the NFL before he gets a head coaching job? I think people will, his dad is a legend. His dad is arguably the best coach of all time, and I don't care what he does as a defensive coordinator. I think it'll probably be a long time before he gets an opportunity to be a head coach.
Yeah. Well, the one other thing I was going to bring up, the bigger picture with Marc-Andre Fleury is it just brings home, what I've been saying all along. Like, I think it would be great for the game because, I think we all feel that Marc-Andre Fleury will retire at the end of the season. I think he alluded to that, didn't he, at the beginning of the season?
He did. Yeah.
But so you'd like to see him go to, Colorado or Edmonton or somewhere where he's got, a chance to win it all. And I think, from the league's perspective, it would be very good. And as you mentioned, he's such a popular national figure. So
to that point, Kev, the game, I think the game of the weekend was the Saturday night contest between the Leafs and Avalanche. In terms of, I've seen the Avalanche play a few times this year, but they had a burr in their saddle because Toronto beat them 8-3 in Toronto early December. So they wanted to, they really wanted to beat the Leafs, but you couldn't have seen that based on the way they started the game. They were down 4-1. They pulled Darcy Kemper. Francouz was okay. But it really was mostly the fact that Colorado took over the game in the second half. The game had like 19 shots in the third period, and then tied the game and then won it in overtime. But you look at Colorado, and the Leafs didn't play a bad game. They gave up a 4-1 lead, but Colorado is just a behemoth offensively. Makar was jumping in the line of Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen were out there for 23, 24 minutes. Honestly, I look at their defense. I look how activated they are with Girard and Taves and Byram and Makar. I look at their forwards that are deep. They just need a goaltender. They just need stability in goal. And if they get that, if they get Fleury, for example, wow. I don't know if they can be stopped.
Yeah, their offense is so much better than everyone else's. Like, I think, are they still like 0.8 better than everyone else? What is it now? They're 4.4.
I'll look up how many goals they have.
That's almost a full goal advantage before they start the game. It's just phenomenal. And their defense is better than they've shown. I think they've been really undermined by, COVID and injuries and so forth. And Kemper, I don't think he's been good, but he's been okay in some games. But when he's been bad, he's been very bad. So I think they will have to do something there. But I think it's a little bit misleading. I had this conversation with someone about, because everyone has played, a different number of games. It's hard to get a real feel on what the standings really are. And I think people have sort of almost forgotten about Colorado because they played fewer games. They're catching up now. But they won 9 out of 10, something like that. They're 9-1-1 and 11.
They have the top winning percentage. If you go by winning percentage, the top winning percentage in the West.
And they've won 11 in a row at home. And I just looked it up. They have 135 goals in 31 games. The league leader right now is Florida at 137 goals in 35 games. That's 4 games in hand. And Vegas is 135 in 38 games. So they're averaging 4.35 goals per game. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it's 1980-ish. Really.
Yeah, and when was the last time we had anybody end the season with over 4?
Yeah, no. So they're a very good team, and I do think their defense, which hasn't been great all the time, I think it will sort of come together. And Makar is just in a different world now. That one goal that everybody was talking about, but he's had several, rushes up the ice where you were going, whoa.
He makes some beautiful plays. He does some creative things that you just It's always fun to watch hockey players do something because we watch them so often, and there's obviously 99% of the time you kind of know what a guy's going to do. Going to put up the boards, going to do this. It's a normal type of thing, and I love when a player comes along and just does something that just baffles you. Like that just is like Makar is beautifully creative. Creativity is such an
I don't see many teams, Kev, doing what Colorado and Bednar is doing right now. You know, we always said like a guy like Sergei Gonchar was sort of a point forward. He was not, or a rover. He was not a defenseman. They've got three guys. Like in that game on Saturday, Makar was activated and in front of the net. So was Devin Taves. Gerard's doing spinorama moves at the blue line. Bowen Byram is a young guy, and I think they don't want him to take too many chances, but he was activated. I mean, all their defense is really actively getting involved in the offense. I'm not just like staying at the point. I mean, they're going deep in the zone. And that's
well, really, for the last several years, we've started to see the most talented defensemen play more of a rover role. I mean, Hedman's been doing it for a long time. And, you know, I think that they have kind of license to kill. You know, I mean, they're given, you know, a freedom to do what they feel like they need to do. Like when Brian Leetch used to be with the Rangers, I mean, it was never talked about, but he had the 00 license to kill. He was allowed to go when he wanted to go, and
but Hedman and him had the speed to get back and the judgment to pick their spots. And you know, some of the some defensemen out there, okay, you know, a guy like Gostisbehere, you know, early in his career, he would take offensive forays, but the problem is he would leave the team shorthanded and they'd go back 2-on-1 the other way.
You know, my argument about that was always, now it's not true of everyone. You know, Bobby Orr was a pretty good defensive player, but some of these guys who have unbelievable speed are terrible defensively anyway. So you might as well let them just go up and do their thing, because whether they're there or they're not there, you know, there's still kind of a hole defensively. So
I mean, the best defense is a good offense sometimes, you know, and that is the reality, right? I mean, like if with Makar's out there.
Eric Carlson's a perfect example of that, Kev. You know, he wins 2 Norris trophies, and my contention was that's all on offense. Defensively, he was not inept, but he was not good.
No, but he was just average. But you know, Bob McKenzie made a really good argument when Carlson was doing that, and I haven't forgotten that argument, because I apply it in many cases in sports. He said sometimes the offensive stats become so staggering that it just swallows up everything else. Yeah. And that's where Carlson was. He was so much better than everyone else that it didn't really matter that he was an average defensive player, because, you know, his offensive ability just made such a tremendous impact on the team. And I really buy that argument, and I buy it in all sports. You know, sometimes.
And he had a defensive defenseman in Mark Mathot, who was his partner for most of the time in Ottawa, who covered up a lot for his defensive shortcomings.
Along those lines, Tom, the one rumor I have today out there is that over the weekend, San Jose's in town, and I picked up that, you know, that they've been talking to Colorado with Thomas Hertl possibly going to the Avalanche, which is like a crazy thing to think about. You know, we just talked about the scoring machine that they have. And, you know, wouldn't Sakic be more focused on getting a goalie than adding a Hertl to play? Basically, the idea was to play Hertl with Rantanen and McKinnon, which is just nuts. But you think?
I mean, I mean, the only thing that makes sense there, is that they want to strengthen their 2-line attack.
That's what they're trying to do.
Because against Toronto, they had Landeskog, Rantanen, and McKinnon out there playing 20+ minutes. Then the second line was Kadri with Burakovsky, and I can't remember who the line. And that's a good second line, but if they want to strengthen their second line, then maybe, you know, because they had Saad on that second line last year, and if they increase the power of that second line, it takes a little bit of the heat off of that number 1 line. But I don't know.
It's really interesting to see Hertl in that situation, because I've always been a big Thomas Hertl fan, and we haven't really seen him, I don't think, we've obviously never seen him surrounded by that kind of talent. Like, if you surround Hertl with that kind of talent, I wonder what he would be, because I think he's underrated, and I think he's really way more talented than people.
But the one thing here, Eck, is that Hertl, I think the market for San Jose for Hertl is going to be rather heated, because he can play center, and there are not many centers in this UFA market. And that's why, I mean, Colorado has got center covered. They've got Kadri at 2, McKinnon at 1, and, you know, Comfer or whoever at 3. They'd be spending assets on a guy that they really don't need. They have needs other than that I think
But
Joe Sakic would take care of before.
Counterpoint on that, Mike, though, is that in the age of what we're going through now with COVID and all the different things where people are constantly in the lineup, don't you want a guy who can play the wing but also jump in at center? Like for them,
You want a guy with
if
versatility.
they get to the playoffs, one of their top two centers goes down. If you can bring Slide Hurdle in there, that's
Yeah, I mean,
the question is, can you, like Kevin just said about McKenzie, but McKenzie, can you overwhelm you? Can they overwhelm us so much in Colorado that they don't have to get a goalie?
Well, I think that's possible. I mean, goaltending is still always important, but we've seen teams that are so strong, offensively that they can make up for having, average goaltending. You can't have bad goaltending. Yeah. And like I said, Kemper's had some good games.
Yeah.
He's just been bad a few times or several times, and it's really stood out. The one thing about Joe Sakic, though, that we all know just from watching, since he's been general manager, is even if he's sitting with pocket aces, he slow plays his hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't. He doesn't move quickly, and he'll take his time and analyze the market. And so I don't expect to see him do anything right away. But he's done some pretty big things.
He really has.
Manager,
you're so right. And the other thing is, we haven't also seen him. I mean, there does come a point at which you can't move slowly. Like if you're Colorado right now, this is it. Like you're in a beautiful spot. Like you have a window that's wide open right here. And
I mean, first of all,
moving slowly here could be dangerous.
The last team to win with bad goaltending was 2010 with Antti Niemi, and that Blackhawk team.
He wasn't bad in that playoff.
No, come on. I'm saying in terms.
Sit there and say I'm sorry, but that's like a little pet peeve of mine, the Antti Niemi thing, because people forget that San Jose series that Chicago played to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, Niemi was ridiculous. Like he was a star of that series. So I mean, he wasn't a star goalie. You could say the last team without a star goalie.
What I'm saying is, look at the goaltending afterward, in terms of Tim Thomas, Jonathan Quick, Corey Crawford, Matt Murray. I mean, all of them were the best.
He was the last guy that won without having to put up great runs.
Yeah, like incredible numbers. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But and he also wasn't a star. Like the other guys you talk about are legitimate stars. Like Niemi wasn't a star.
Or at least at that point they were.
Yeah, they were. And I get that, but you do need, he still needed to win a series for them to get to that. So it's like you do need a goalie at some point in the playoffs is my point. Like at a point, at some point you need.
The other issue regarding trades is, and I just had this discussion with someone about the fact that there are a bunch of teams now that are kind of on pause because they got to figure out what their team is going to do. Like Lou Lamoriello was very aggressive, but apparently he's put the trade talk on hiatus while he sort of figures out where they're at and whether they can get back in and do all that kind of stuff. The Dallas Stars, they've got a bunch of people that people would like, but they're not going to do anything right now because they're not all that far out of the playoffs. They're only like 3 points if you look at what's happening in the other division. And they won 4 in a row, and then they lost, but they lost a 2-1, 3-2 game yesterday, something like that.
I mean,
so they played better. So I think there's pressure on Jim Nill and Rick Bowness in Dallas. So, they're going to really make a push before they start moving people out. And there are a few other teams that I think want to see what happens.
It's way. I mean, okay, we can speculate, and God knows I love doing it, but it's way too early because we're over 2.5 months away from the deadline. And the thing is, the deadline. I was talking about this with a reporter friend of mine yesterday. They could move the trade deadline forward if they extend the season a week or two. They could move the deadline forward from March 21st. So say they move the deadline to April 1st, Dak, we're talking over 2.5 months.
You're talking moving backward, I guess is what you're saying.
Moving it forward in terms of the calendar, moving it like it's March 21st right now. If they extend the season a week, which Bill Daly said is a possibility because they could still end the playoffs by the end of June. Yeah. If they move the deadline forward a week or week and a half to say April 1st, That's
that's moving it backward. Yeah.
Or moving back. I'm moving back.
I consider that backward too.
Yeah, that's you confused me there. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I was saying.
I'm seeing all right, but yeah. So, but
You're moving it down the road. Yeah.
If that happens, then I mean,
yeah.
these teams are going to be even more like, okay, let's wait a while because there's so much season to go before that happens.
Let's talk about another elephant that's he's not in the room, but he's in the league, and that is Evander Kane.
Oh yes.
I wanted to bring this up about the discussion about how long it will take to get this grievance organized. Like I talked to someone today who said, these things don't happen overnight,
right?
And the league and the PA have to agree on an arbitrator. So, right. Will the NHL slow play this to drag this out a little bit?
Well, apparently this would be on two tracks because Pierre LeBrun said, and Daniel Milstein is his agent, that there's of course, as soon as the announcement was made that his contract was terminated, a number of teams have contacted, and that could be true, that could be false. I mean, he may be drumming up business, but I have a feeling if
I believe it's true. I believe it's
true.
Teams that want to sign him. So.
Now, yeah. I think, and Milstein said this. He says it would be for the rest of the year, and it would be a 1-year deal. So at say $750K, if he takes a league minimum deal, there'll be teams lined up. But that is a separate track along, that would happen on one track, and the grievance would be like that is going to be settled, and that could be a month or so down the road. He's a free agent. That's the thing. But what we were talking before the show, Kev, is the PA does not want this situation to become a precedent because San Jose, whatever the reason, I don't know the whole reason, everybody's explained it, but they found a, cause to terminate his contract that's freeing them of $21+ million over the last 3 years of his contract. The PA is grieving this because they don't want these teams to have an out. If you don't follow exactly what we do, you're terminated. I mean,
this is going to be hard. Yeah. I think it's going to be hard for San Jose to win this in a way. I might be wrong, but
you may be right. The deal is that arbitration is always difficult to project, because it's just one person's opinion, and that's why, the way it goes is both sides have to agree on an arbitrator. And that could take a little bit of time, but I think Mike's point is a great one because you forget about this. Like you could I don't know how many employees the player associate has. Oh, let's just do this. Say this. Every player in the league, if they polled them on what they thought of Evander Kane's decision to leave the city and risk $24 million in contract, 97% of them, even though some of them probably agree that you should be able to do what you want to do when you're in quarantine. 97% of them could think he's a knucklehead, but the PA would still fight like crazy just for what Mike said. You can't allow teams to every time they get mad at somebody because they want to get rid of.
This is a precedent that's really scary.
Yeah, it's scary. I'm sure.
By the way, there is an elephant in the room here. I just want
there you go.
That's the first time I've actually seen the elephant in the room.
There is an elephant in the room here. I know. It was just as you said, there's not an elephant in the room. I looked and there was an elephant right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all remember the Mike Richards situation, but that was tied to a drug arrest at the border, and that was the mitigating factor. But it was brought up on one of the broadcasts I listened to. If you remember Jake Dotchin, who was a defenseman with Tampa Bay, he had his contract terminated by the Lightning because he was out of shape.
Yeah.
And so they terminated it. I don't know if there was any kind of arbitration there, but he ended up getting signed by Anaheim to a contract almost the same amount as he made with Tampa. In this instance, nobody is signing Evander Kane for $7 million. The only reason that they're 10 or 12 or whatever teams lined up is because they see like Zach Bogosian. He gets the contract terminated. he signs the rest of this year at $750,000. It's a benefit to him because if he goes someplace with talent, he could show up and play well and then basically sell himself to get a new deal. But right now, I mean, if I'm Evander Kane, I'm in a panic right now because I just lost $24 million.
Yeah, well, at the risk of sounding like Tom Brady, which will irritate Mike, what did Brady say about the Antonio Brown when everyone else was just saying, what a ridiculous thing that he did and everything? He says, well, I mean, to him, that's just a sign that he needed some help, and that's the way people should view this. And that's what I would say about Evander Kane. If you're going to sign him, great. The sports world is full of guys who have gotten second and third and fourth chances, and that's the way it should be. But clearly he's made a lot of poor decisions everywhere he's been. He's gotten himself, and I would hope that whoever signs him says to him, "Yeah, we're going to sign you, but you got to sit down with somebody, somebody of your choice or whatever." And hopefully his agent or his family or the Players Association or somebody is saying, "Yeah, I mean, something's wrong here. You're not making good decisions." So I'm hopeful that will come to pass when he signs, that someone will have the clout with him. Well, to do that.
Yeah, me too.
I just wrote about this, Zach, and again, everybody's going to put two and two together, and it could mean completely nothing. But just this, because I speculated, would the Leafs be in on Evander Kane now? And if he takes a league minimum deal, which I think is going to be the prerequisite for most of these teams, unless they have tons of cap space, yes, they'd be interested. A. B, their weak spot is left wing. Besides defense, it's left wing, and he could play with either Tavares or Matthews, so that would be attractive to him. C, he's represented by Daniel Milstein, who's done a ton of business with the Leafs over the years with, I believe, Zaitsev and Mikheyev and a lot of the Russian free agents, so him and Dubas have a good relationship. The other thing is he is associated and friendly with Wayne Simmons, the current Leaf winger, and they are two of the group of players who just recently, or they formed that Hockey Diversity Alliance. So there's a lot of connections here. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, because he could go to Tampa, he could go to the Rangers, there's a number of teams that are interested. But I think the connections there with Toronto are a possibility. And last year, they rolled the dice on a guy like Alex Galchenyuk when nobody was going to give him a chance. So I think there's a possibility that Kane could end up in Toronto, and that might cause some problems because of his sort of checkered past. And I don't know whether it's a good idea, but I think there's a little bit of desperation there on the part of Shanahan and Kyle Dubas.
Yeah.
Win this year, and if you need to go down the road of signing Evander Kane, I think they would.
I think if you're the GM that's going to consider this, you have to first just, push your chair back from your desk and say, okay, well, how is my leadership group?
Yeah.
And like, if you're Tampa Bay, you're not worried one iota,
right?
Because it's just a strong leadership group.
Yeah.
And on the face of it, Toronto seems to be fine too, but there's still some younger players there. So, so I'd be a little bit concerned. Colorado.
Yeah. Colorado makes sense. No, but to that point, Kev, I mean, their leadership group of it's Tavares and Simmons and
right.
That's they're young players, but there are a lot of veterans and Jake Muzzin. I think that it's strong enough that they could withstand it. But the things that we have all heard about Evander Kane going back to Atlanta and Winnipeg and Buffalo, I mean, it's enough to give anybody pause. So there is enough risk there.
I mean, I think chemistry is so vitally important with teams going into the playoffs, and just especially when he's going to take somebody's job. He's going to come into that locker room. He's going to take somebody's job, and that's going to rub some players the wrong way. It's just no two ways about it. Even some of the top players, even if he's a really good player. I mean, the reality is, we've seen this kind of thing before. I'm going to draw the Jeff Carter analogy, not completely obvious. Jeff Carter's not in the Evander Kane era, but when Jeff Carter was traded from Philly to Columbus, he was a disaster in Columbus, and he was no one. He wasn't.
Didn't want to be there. He didn't
any
want
effort. He didn't want to be there. And he worked his way out of there pretty quickly. And I was like, oh man. And then the Canes went and got him. and the rest is history. He was an incredible king, but he was just terrible. And so you can see players get new starts, and but I feel like the grievance. It feels like if they were going to file this grievance, they should have done it a long time ago. They should have done it before they tried to trade him. They should have done it.
They had no grounds to do it until they terminated the deal.
I mean, they did have other reasons before,
Well, not anything that, I mean, he clearly violated, the rules of COVID protocol, which on the face of it seems serious, although, there are a lot of players, I'm sure, who are thinking, what's the big deal? When I was on COVID, no one caught me, but I went out to a restaurant with my wife, or whatever, so, there are players who I'm sure think, I don't have any problem with Evander Kane doing what he wanted to do.
Is this worse than him lying about his his COVID tests? I mean, that.
No, well, yeah, no, it's COVID test for sure. And he got 21 games, but, that always felt like, that they gave him a suspension based on, what a super annoyance he's been for the league for this year.
Didn't the Sharks if the Sharks were gonna call him on something, why not then? Why would they? Like that seems so much more egregious. Other things, happen. I mean, he does. Why not then?
Again, I compared the 21-game suspension for Kane at the beginning of the year to OJ getting arrested for armed robbery. They couldn't get him on the things that he was accused of regarding spousal abuse or things of that nature. It was a cumulative effect, and they knew he had a fake vaccination card, so they got him on that. And I think the penalty for that 21 games I thought was sort of over the top, but that's got him on. In this instance, I mean, one of the things I heard was a mitigating factor here was the CDC changing the 10 days to 5 days.
Right.
And the fact that happened right in the middle of when he was in protocol. So was it the 10 days that they considered a violation, or the 5 days, or the fact that he went to Vancouver and didn't come back? I mean, there's a number of things here both. Yeah, it's both.
Because he didn't come back till January 6th, and he was diagnosed or tested positive on 21st.
21st, yeah.
So he was gone. So he was gone. Whether it was 10 or it was 5, he was gone longer than he should have. And he left. He wasn't quarantining. You're not quarantining if you're getting on a plane to go to Vancouver. So he went to 29. So he certainly didn't. It's beyond the 5, but it wasn't beyond the 10. So the question was did he seek medical consultation before he did that, or did he do it on his own?
Right. Now, Kev, a little surprising news coming from the LA Kings that Mark Bergevin takes a job as a senior advisor to Rob Blake. And immediately when I heard that, everybody, I saw some chatter on Twitter, well, Rob Blake must be in danger. And then John Hoven, who covers the Kings, said, well, Blake is going to get an extension. So is this Bergevin basically just landing a gig while he's looking for a GM spot someplace else?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Ex-GMs get hired by, their buddies, and Luke Robitaille, Bergevin are friends. And I'm sure he knows Rob Blake real well, and, probably wants to go out to LA and hang out a little bit. And so for sure, I mean, that's standard operating procedure for a former general manager to with some other team with one of his friends.
Yeah.
Completely. Now, I know that you brought this up. We were talking about the Chychrun chatter out there.
Yeah.
And then we also Kevin brought up Lawson Krause, and that's really picked up over the last week or so. I know Jeff Merrick has reported about both of them. And that Chychrun is drawing like offers. He termed it similar to what San Jose had to give up to get Brent Burns from Minnesota, which was like a package of prospect, a young player, and a first round pick. That that type of deal. But
I don't think it's outrageous. I hear people say, well, they want the Jack Eichel package, and that's ridiculous. Well, is it? Jacob Chikrin, Jeff Chikrin. That's his father. It would be outrageous for
Jeff Chikrin. I wouldn't get that.
It would be outrageous for Jeff.
Because he's too old to play in the league.
He's too old.
Anyway,
that's the Ty Cobb line, Kev. How would you hit now? I'd hit about 280. Well, I'm 65 years old, so of course I don't hit 280.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, Chikrin is 23 years old.
Yeah,
he's a physical specimen who got 18 goals last year. He's playing for a horrible team. He's kind of a two-way guy. He's got a lot of upside. Yeah. He's making only $4.6 million for this year and 3 more. So he's somewhat of a bargain. He can be in your top pairing. He's just scratching the surface of his ability. So, as I laid out that Boston scenario, like everybody that I talked to said, well, I'd do that if I was Boston.
Yeah.
Well, of course you would. You mean you're giving up DeBrusque, a first-round pick and a second-round pick? That doesn't seem outrageous for a guy who could step right into your lineup and maybe play in your top pairing, like a left-right combo with McAvoy.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine? Like he immediately gives Boston. He opens the window for Boston.
Well, yeah. And so, is it that big of a jump then to say, if you're the Coyotes, to say, well, give me one more player? Now we got the Eichel deal.
Right. Now I got the deal.
I don't know that it is a reach, and I think somebody would be willing to pay that. I think, and the contenders, and this is the other issue that I've brought up. The contenders are picking down 25 to 32. Yeah, they're not giving up a top 10 pick.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, that's why I think in any deal, if it's to a contender, it's got to include, the first round pick is nice, but if it's, say it's Toronto, their pick is going to be in the 20s, or the Rangers or one of the top teams. Yeah. You have to include the organization's top prospect who's ready to step in the NHL within a year. But the thing, and Russ, I talked to Russ this morning. He wasn't able to do the show, and he brought up this point. The concern of the NHL here is, okay, you've got 3 or 4 really good young players on the Coyotes. You've got Chikrin, you've got Clayton Keller, you've got Lawson Krause, who's not a star or anything, but he's a solid player. If they start to divest themselves of these guys, what team is there? And you pair that up with the fact that this Tempe, Arizona $1.7 billion thing is falling apart, and they don't have a home for next year. They're worse than an expansion team right now, especially if they trade these guys. The NHL has to factor that into allowing them to do these types of deals.
Yeah, I've never understood what they were doing. To me, this feels sort of like the Ryan O'Reilly situation, although not for the same reasons. I thought at the time that Buffalo should never trade Ryan O'Reilly, and they did. And I feel like they're doing the same thing in Arizona, where they're trading guys who are going to just get better and better. And you when you're rebuilding, you're trying to get guys like Chikrin.
You're
like or Connor Garland. Did that make any sense?
That was the moment I really started to lose hope. But in Arizona, Connor Garland.
Although
the NHL could step in, and I mean they have been known in the past to say, listen,
Well, I mean, okay, Ryan O'Reilly was traded from Buffalo because Ryan O'Reilly called into question the organization's willingness to win. And they basically had to save face. In this instance, Chikrin is not saying Arizona is clueless. He's just
a different situation. But they didn't have to trade O'Reilly.
Right, they didn't have to.
They didn't have to, and they did, So, I don't know. I thought that sent them spiraling even at a faster rate of speed downhill.
I agree.
They thought they had a replacement in Casey Middlestat who wouldn't cost them $7 million, and to this day, they would have had more of a return in that deal had they not had the Bagulas paid the signing bonus. They said, we'll take basically anything you offer us if you pay the $8 million signing bonus. And that deal, and to this day, the only thing they have to show for that deal is Tage Thompson. So way to go there, Sabres.
Yeah, he's a good player though.
I'm not saying he's not, but
I'm not. But like you said, it was a terrible trade all around. No questions asked about that. I mean, they did get something. There have been teams like that have gotten nothing, but they did get. But at the end of the day, I mean, does the NHL say anything to them, Kevin? Does the NHL?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a real good question to ask. I think not, because the argument would be we've allowed other teams to rebuild, and should we really be telling them how to do it? Maybe if the Coyotes went in and said, look, the way we feel that you do this is you have a blank chalkboard and you start completely over. You strip it down to the chassis, and that means getting everybody out, including the younger players. So we want to just start from the beginning and build through the draft. And we feel if we trade Chikrin, we're going to get 4 or 5 assets instead of 1. And by the time we're ready, it's going to be 5 years. He's going to be 28 years old. That's the argument. I don't necessarily buy it, but
yeah, it's not a good argument.
But I don't know. I mean, they could. I mean, they're all powerful.
I think there have been times in the past when they have. I mean, and they've said
historically in sports, it's happened a few times.
It's putting an awful lot of pressure on Bill Armstrong and his scouting staff. I mean, right now I think they have 3 first-round picks and like 5 second-round picks.
Right.
And if you're trading Chikrin or if you're trading Krause, you're going to get a boatload more of draft. So you're going to have all these 18-year-olds coming around at the same time, and then 4 or 5 years down the line, you're going to have to pay all of them all at the same time. So it's like I don't know. I mean, I just think the way this organization, I understand what they're doing, Kev, but
they do sort of. It's sort of like Noah's Ark. They arrive 2 at a time.
Yeah.
Like here in Detroit, like they got Sider and Matthews this year, and I just wrote a piece where I said, the expectation is next year there'll be 2 more. It'll be Edvinsson and maybe Bergevin, and then 3 years from now there'll be 2 more. So then there'll be 6. Yeah. So it just they don't all come at the same time, but we've heard about this a long time. General managers have said for a long time, well, you don't want too many guys within the same age group because of the contract. So, your point is a valid one, but, they don't seem to mature at the same rate.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I do want to touch base briefly on, because there have been a lot of questions about the Flyers on this, because obviously the loss to was pretty devastating loss to San Jose. They're up 2-0 in that game. They didn't play well at all, but it was they're up 2-0 still going in the third period, and then they give up. Hurdle scores a hat trick basically in 2 goals in regulation, 1 in overtime, and wins the game. And that makes 5 straight losses for them. Going into now Carolina and Boston, their next 2 games. It's not a good thing right now in Philly. And I just wonder at what point, we're going to see a change here in the interim coaching situation, because really what we haven't seen anything change. It's so hard. It's so hard to get a difference from an interim coach sometimes. It almost, like I said, I wrote an article about this, but it almost implies, when you fire 2/3 of your coaching staff, it applies like the other guy was like okay, and the other 2 weren't. What does that mean? I mean, I know Vigneault and Therrien were sort of linked together, obviously, and Mike Yale's a different, and he's, I think he's a good coach, but I think that I'm still not hearing anything from the Flyers players, and I know they're under a lot of, they've had a lot of guys missing with COVID, and
but the thing is, I mean, I think you have to factor in that Vigneault was a part of the problem, and maybe there was a disconnect there, and Therrien obviously, but the problem with the Flyers has more been Ellis being out of the lineup, Couturier.
Oh, yeah, they're missing. Someone in the chat room says 10 regulars. Yeah, they're missing a lot of players.
Hayes being out of the lineup. Carter Hart playing good but not great.
He's been fine.
Provorov not playing anywhere close to the way he has the last few years. It's a number of factors, and I don't think that going out and hiring a new head coach. First of all, I don't think any head coach worth his salt is going to take this job right now. I think that
you're wrong there. You're wrong there for sure. Because no, I mean, Philly is one of those places where coaches will take the job, Mike. It's not like this is. I'm
not saying that.
And they're gonna, this is a place where coaches do want to come and.
No, but what I'm saying, Ak, is I agree. I mean, it's a prime job. I'm not saying that it's not. But what I'm saying is, right now, in the midst of a mess, I don't think a coach wants to step in right now. I think a coach wants to step in at the end of the season, before next season, when they have a chance to, augment the lineup. I'm not saying it's right
in
now.
my experience, the coach steps in now. He's going to get a 3-year contract or something like that. A 2 or 3 year contract at least. And so it doesn't.
Yeah.
So why not step in now, Kevin?
I think I agree with that on this, Mike. Just from if Rick Tocchet got this job, I'm sure he would look at it as, okay, now I have half a season to sort out who I like, who I don't like.
True.
And then afterward, we can kind of discuss where we're headed from here, and we'll see if this is salvageable. I mean, one of the issues with the Flyers is, you guys have really hit this on the head, is it's hard to know where they're at, because they've just been overrun by injuries and just key injuries. Ryan Ellis, not only you lose Ryan Ellis, but you lost. The reason you got Ryan Ellis is to make Provorov a better player, and so you didn't get that.
Right.
It just seems like they've been out of sync, and it's hard to tell what the problem is. But when I've watched, they can't score a goal. They have to work so hard to get a goal. It's ridiculous.
Which is nuts, and if they're all healthy, they have. I mean, this is a team on paper that has plenty of scoring power. It's if they're all there, but they're not all there. And now we have the whole concept of Claude Giroux possibly being traded, and people are coming to me.
Do you think he will be? I
do. I'm starting to. I mean, I really am, and I don't think he wants to be. I know he likes it here. He's the longest running captain this team's ever had. This team's never had a captain for as long as he's been captain. But he also does. I mean, I know, he's still close with Voracek. I know he talks to people who have left here, and I think he does want a chance to do something. He's having a great year, and he is one of the really weird things in the middle of all this. He's playing as good as he's ever played. So he's in a contract year, and I guess, playing for his contract, but I think he will be. I do. I think at this point, unless things turn around and they're back in it, I think he's going to be moved. I don't think people saying Provorov, that's not going to happen. They're not going to move Provorov. But I think they'll move Giroux. I really do. Here's Russ. Russ, what are your thoughts on that concept?
Trading Claude Giroux.
I think Russ. So Russ, I was just asked. Hey Russ, I was just asked this question. Hey. Kevin, do you think the Flyers actually will trade Claude Giroux? And I do. I think they will.
I don't know. I think they're going to try and see what he wants in a deal first. Because if he's willing to take a 3-year deal, I think they keep him. If he's looking for a 5-year deal at what his market value might be, then they won't keep him. I think it comes down to that.
Yeah, it could.
That's a succinct answer, Russ. Right, that makes a lot of sense.
It could. I mean, that's a well thought out answer. I'm just going on my gut. I just feel like at the end of the day, I mean, you're right. Everything you're saying. At the end of the day, I think that what you said ends up with them trading him because and we'll see a New Jerusalem, as I say. I've been waiting to use that. I've been waiting to use that headline forever. New Jerusalem. Come on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, ripping off Peter Gabriel and supper's ready there.
Yeah, Moses likes this.
Yeah, I've just been waiting that
You missed it, Russ. We had an elephant in the room. Literally, we had an elephant in the room.
Right here.
Here we go.
Oh wow! Look at that.
There's the elephant in the room.
That's incredible.
I'm offended that you're talking about my weight that way.
That's incredible. Good job on that. Wow. I mean, like I said, you have sets in your house. It's insane.
Yeah, check out the elephant's a big star in the new video. All right.
Plus, let's just go back to the Arizona talk for a second, because I want Russ to express his point of view on the Coyotes. But with the talk that's going on about Chychrun and Krause, and Russ, you were saying.
Yeah, here was my thought. If the NHL knows that team is moving, and they have to know now that the word out of Tempe is not good as far as that deal passing, and they don't have a rink for next year. I'm sure the NHL is 75% knowing that this team has to play somewhere next year, and somebody is going to have to buy it, whether they buy it back and sell it to somebody, whether it gets sold by the current owners, whether the current owners move it, whatever the situation. But are they going to really let this team gets strip mined? Even if you say we're all going to use the words fair value, right? Yeah, that's great. There is no fair value for Jacob Chychrun, what he's worth to that organization, because the minute you take him away, Victor Soderstrom's a really good defenseman. I think he could turn into something, but he's not going to be Jacob Chychrun. I mean, it's just you're not getting Jacob Chychrun back in the deal. you're going to get more futures and more futures, and they have futures piled up to here, and they will be the worst team in the league for like 4 years at least, because like you saw what happened with the Sabres. And the league could stop that from happening, and I just don't know if they will, or if they're not trying to.
Do they have to sell the team to move it? I mean, don't you think these owners would love to have this team elsewhere?
Well, apparently these owners are more invested in having that team as part of a real estate development in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. And if they can't make that happen, then I guess that ends their level of interest. So I mean, like anything, it's like in Buffalo, they're talking about building the stadium someplace where the Pagulas can develop real estate around it, and it being a multi-billion-dollar thing. So I don't know. I mean, what you're saying, Kev, makes sense, but they can't get the development deal, which is what I think is the centerpiece of what they want to do. Then maybe it doesn't work for them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
but I'm just worried if you start trading Chychrun and Krause, like they barely have any guys that are coming back next year anyhow.
Well, that was the other point I was going to make, because right now I think Buffalo and Arizona have 3 first-round picks for next year's draft. Look at their rosters right now. I think cumulatively they have like 25 unrestricted free agents. I don't know if you're looking at the teams that are going to be probably retaining salary or taking on bad contracts at the deadline. Look at Arizona and Buffalo, because when they trade out the Kessels and the Krauses and the other guys, they have to stay at the cap floor. They'll probably take on bad contracts for draft picks. They're going to be brokers at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean they should be. They should be. I mean,
that's
the plans move they have to do. But you're right. I mean, in terms of the fact that they're going to have all kinds of cap space and all kinds of opportunities. And the question is, who's going to want to go there though? Right now, Buffalo's a very different situation than Arizona. I mean, Buffalo's an established city that they're going to have a hockey team for a very long time, and there are some positive things in Buffalo. Arizona, I mean, to go to sign if you're a UFA, and even out in Cheektowaga, but if you're a UFA, looking at Arizona, that's it used to be a pretty good place to go. I mean, you don't have much of an option around and stuff like that, but right now, oh my gosh,
you don't have much of an option if you have term on your contract and not a no move clause.
And also, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of, like, with the cap being not going up in the offseason. I mean, there's going to be players that are going to have to sign in Arizona. There's just going to be the reality.
Sure.
We're going to have a lot of guys out there that have no home.
But they'll all be short-term deals. They'll get the shortest term they possibly can.
Right.
Yeah, but who knows how they could be good? They could end up being pretty good. They could end up having there's a lot of opportunity.
Well, no, that's not.
Hey, did you guys mention Jack LaFontaine?
No,
go ahead.
So this was a really brilliant signing by Carolina, because he's a really good college goalie. Now, I don't expect him to be their number one or anything close to it in the future, but he's played a lot of games in college. Like he's had as many as like 29 starts. So I do think I saw one of the beat writers say it's gotten so desperate they've signed Jack LaFontaine, and it's like I didn't like to hear that, because the guy won the Richter Award. He's a leader. He's a big goalie, and I think he's better than people think. So I do think this was smart to kind of reach out to him and see if he could sign now and lead the school. And he did. And you know what? More power to him. That's something where they had a need, and instead of just going and getting like any kind of e-bug or something that was floating out there, they got a guy that they drafted. Smart.
Yeah, they put him right on the taxi squad too. So.
Yep. Smart.
And they are looking phenomenal. I mean, they are the number. I think they're number 2 or maybe number 2, maybe in winning percentage in the NHL right now.
I think they're 1, aren't they?
It might be 1. Yeah, I think Florida, and they keep going back and forth.
Well, they lost yesterday. They were at 761 the last time I looked.
Yeah, and by the way, and LaFontaine was the captain this year at Minnesota. And how many goalies do you honestly see as captains?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're right, Kevin. They're still number 1.
And they overlooked David Ayers, Russ.
They did. I mean, but this is good though, because what this basically does is it forwards LaFontaine's career. It gives him some security, but it also shows that the Hurricane fans that, hey, we do have a lot of guys like this, and we are going to be more aggressive than in the past. And now they won't have to worry about losing somebody like LaFontaine, because he could have been a guy they could have lost.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Without signing him.
Really interesting. Russ, you have anything else? We got to get going here. Thanks for jumping on now.
Go.
Well, thanks folks for watching. Remember, we'll be back again tomorrow. Enjoy the games tonight. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. So we will talk to you then.